Gang violence accounts for about 800 murders annually, a large percent of which are connected to drug trafficking. When we consider how to turn the tide of gun violence in this country, maybe ending the war on drugs is the best gun control measure we can enact. I mean, is this possible that part of it is just it's driven by a thing that should be a public health problem that we have turned into a crime problem instead?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think that we need to end the war on drugs immediately. I think the president has taken steps.
We've lost.
And we've lost it. And President Clinton said 2 weeks ago it was an utter failure.
Yeah.
So a guy who fought the war on drugs is now saying it's an utter failure. I think the president has taken steps to do so. I think mandatory minimum sentencing has to be, on a federal level, gotten rid of. I think that if you look at the school-to-prison pipeline, how we take our kids and just basically manufacture them to become prisoners, we have to look at it in a concrete way. But there's a piece of legislation by Congressman Bobby Scott out of Virginia called the Youth Promise Act. Right? It looks at, and it has bipartisan support, it looks at holistic approaches to gang intervention and prevention, to violence intervention and prevention, to programs like the Harlem program here. It looks at programs from a holistic approach and saying, can we take a community and rebuild the community because we destroyed them with the war on drugs.
Listen, I just want to point out, though, I mean, it's very important to have conversations like this. This is a complex issue with complex solutions, and we should have those conversations. We should have them policy-wise, and we should have them culturally, but we shouldn't have them at the expense of talking about what we can do right now to keep guns off our streets and out of the hands of dangerous people. It also relates to the mental health issue. You know, there's a lot of gravity around the mental health conversation. Unfortunately, that gravity is to pull it apart from the gun issue, to talk about access to mental health services, another very important conversation. But let's also talk about what we can do. You know, there's certain mental illnesses where people are predisposed to harming themselves or harming others. Through background checks, you can keep guns out of those hands. Through education, public health approach, you can educate parents, you can educate clinicians that maybe, Mrs. Lanza, it's not a great idea if your son is predisposed towards harming somebody to have an arsenal in your house. So we can have those conversations from a public health perspective and from a policy perspective, but we should always make sure, especially right now, they're grounded in access to guns.
Right, so these are multiple conversations happening at the same time, not separately.
Yes, absolutely. I say that. But we need to look more, as you did before, Dan. Let's talk about bullying. A lot of mental illness and angriness come from bullying. These kids are bullied, and sometime when you're bullied, and I just heard a story, that the child was so much bullied in school till he went and got a gun, and he shot the kid. And that plays a big part. So what do we say to the educators? What do we say to the parents? What do we say to the children? Speak up. If you're scared, tell someone. Tell your family member. Tell your counselor. It is a speak-up number, as Dan mentioned earlier. So we have to really start paying attention and educate, do more education, put funding in educating these kids on bullying. We have a peer-to-peer program.
I appreciate it. It is the, you know, what I appreciate about you reminding us of that, Dan, and reminding us of that is that the layers lay on top of each other. There is the question of mental illness, but then there's the question of our social social illnesses. But none of that can be divorced from the policies that we can enact today that can, in fact, reduce the access to guns on everything from the internet to at gun shows, all of those things. This is incredibly complex. We spent an hour and it's still not enough, but I appreciate all of you for being here. A couple folks are sticking around. Jackie Rowe Adams, thank you for being here, and thank you for bringing your passion and experience to us. Dan, thank you for being here, and also just thank you for being in the fight, because this is a tough one.
Well, we're going to stay in the fight. We're going to stay with the mothers. Just yesterday, I just want to say a kid got shot right across from Harlem, Mother Save. So enough is enough. Legislators, listen to what the president proposed. And I hope they make their best argument.
Thank you, Ms. Rowe Adams. We are changing gears dramatically next. We're actually going to try to lighten it up. We're going to have a funny moment about Amy Poehler and Tina Fey as they're taking center stage. We're going to talk about women in Hollywood. There is more Nerdland at the top of the hour.